Stream Elements said, What if_productions is now live, streaming Just Chatting, photo editing with Ben.
All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to be doing some photo editing on some stuff that I shot earlier today. One of the properties was, let me think where it was at. It was up in Grand Lake. So we're going to do a little bit of editing on the exteriors. And then we're going to prep our images to send off to editing. And we also shot a property today down in Denver. Let me move this light here. It's got much better lighting here. First off, I'm just going to go through and start starring some of my interior images. So I'll probably have the editing team do those today. Start starring our exteriors here. We start all of these. Let's do some editing on our exterior shots. So I'm going to open all of these in Bridge, and I'm going to apply my camera raw before I blend it. Let's hit done. Open up the main version of Photoshop here. I'm just using these three files here. Let's load these up into Photoshop layers. And let's align our layers here. Let's pop open Instamask. We're going to use our mid-range exposure to kind of blend all these together. So this one, let's take it down a whole stop. Bring up our shadows a little bit. Bring up our blacks a little bit. Drop down our highlights. And this one, let me see here. We're going to have to select our darks. And we're just going to layer all that in. And we're going to bring this one up by a whole stop. Let's drop our contrast. Bring up our shadows a little bit. Bring up our blacks a little bit. Let's go into our color mixer here. Let's deepen our blues a little bit. And on the luminance, let's brighten that up a little bit. Merge these layers together. We're going to have it select our brights. Okay. We're just going to layer in our bright tones. Okay. Let's merge all of these together and let's take this into Camera Raw here. Let's give it a lot more contrast. I don't think we really need to push our exposure a lot on this one. Maybe just give the whites a little push. With the shadows just a little bit. And up the blacks just a little bit. Maybe knock down our highlights just a tad. Okay, let's go into our sharpening. Let's sharpen this image. Let's go into our straightening here. I think we're gonna have to do this manually. Go into a color mixer here. And let's play with the saturation of our yellows and our greens, just make it pop a little bit more. And that looks like a good picture to me, so let's close that out. Save on that. Okay, let's load these layers up. That's loading up here. Let's see what we got going on our stream here. And let's see, we have Joni Sells Veil joining the stream from Instagram. Thanks for joining the stream. Let's align our layers here. That. We have Joni Sells Veil joining the stream from Instagram. Thanks for joining the stream. Let's see. Let's align our layers here. We want to cut our mid, so that's our darker exposure. So maybe start with this one as our main. So let's bring this down by a whole stop. Let's go to 26 contrast. Let's bring up our shadows just a little bit. Bring up our blacks just a little bit and knock down our highlights. And let's have it select our tone based on our dark tones. Let's layer mask that in. Okay, let's go to 26 contrast. Let's bring up our shadows just a little bit. And now let's bring this exposure up by a whole stop. Bring our contrast down. Bring our shadows up. Bring our blacks up. I think we should be good there, and we're just going to use this to make our brights a little less bright. So let's select our brights here based on luminance. Now let's bring this exposure up by a whole stop. Let's layer that in. Bring our contrast down. And on this one, I'm going to darken our blues a little bit in our sky. So let's go into our luminance here. Darken that. And we're just going to use this to saturate our blues a little bit more. So let's select our brights here based on luminance. And we got a sky that's a little bit more blue now. Let's layer that in. Okay, let's take this into Camera Raw. And on this one, I'm going to darken our blues a little bit in our sky. Straighten that out. Okay, let's give it some more contrast. Give our exposure a slight boost. Boost our shadows just slightly. Boost our blacks just slightly, and knock down our highlights a little bit. Okay, now let's go into our sharpening menu and let's sharpen this image. I'm just going to sharpen just around our edges. Let's go into our color mixer menu and we're just going to boost our greens and our yellows just a little bit. Maybe saturate our blues just a little bit more. All that good. Okay, now let's go into our sharpening menu and let's sharpen this image. I'm just going to sharpen just around our edges. Let's go into our color mixer menu and we're just going to boost our greens and our yellows just a little bit. Maybe saturate our blues just a little bit more. Ease up real quick here. Looks like we got one person watching on YouTube at the moment right now. Thanks for joining the stream. Feel free to write in anything, ask any questions or anything like that. And then we got one person watching on Twitch at the moment. Thanks for joining the stream. Ease up real quick here. Looks like we got one person watching on YouTube at the moment right now. Thanks for joining the stream. Feel free to write in anything, ask any questions or anything like that. Let's knock this down by a stop. On Twitch at the moment. Thanks for joining the stream. Bring up our shadows, bring up our blacks. Maybe knock down our highlights just a little bit. Go select our dark tones. We're just going to layer mask in our darks. Okay. Bring up our shadows. Now we're going to select our brights here. Let's layer mask this in. It's going to look muddy for a second, but we're going to clean it up by adjusting our exposure a little bit. So let's go up a stop. Let's go a little less contrast. Shadows, blacks. Bring down our highlights just a little bit. Let's go into our color mixer. Let's bring down the luminance of our blue sky so it's a little bit darker. Let's increase the saturation of our sky. So let's go to stop. There, we got a much better blend on that now. Let's merge all these layers together. Let's deselect. Bring down the highlights just a little bit. Now let's go into camera raw. Let's give this more contrast. Let's give it a slight exposure boost, maybe a little bit of shadows, a little bit of blacks, and just drag down our highlights. Keeping that blue sky. Let's go into our sharpening menu and let's sharpen the image. Now let's go into camera. Let's give this more contrast. Let's do some straightening. Let's give it a slight exposure boost. Maybe let's pull down. Let's pull our yellows and our greens, the saturation of them. That blue sky. That looks like a good image to me, so let's take that out. Do some straightening. Let's pull down. Let's pull our yellows from the greens and we're going to blend them together. That looks like a good image to me, so let's take that out. From the greens and we're going to blend them together. That looks like a good image to me, so let's take that out. Use this as our mid-range exposure. Let's align our layers here. Bring this down by a stop. So we can bring up some of our dark information using this layer. So we can give it a contrast, boost our shadows, boost our blacks. Mid-range exposure. Let's align our layers here. Now we're going to select based on our luminance here. Let's do our darks. Let's layer mask that in. And now we're going to merge our layers. And we're going to bring this up by a stop because we're going to use it to retain some of our highlight information. And we're going to bring down our contrast just a little bit. Bring up our shadows. Bring up our blacks. Knock down our highlights just a little bit. Okay, we are going to select our bright information now. And we're just going to layer mask that in. Okay. Let's merge all these layers together. Now let's go into camera raw. Let's give it a bit of sharpening. Mask our edges. Let's give it some contrast. Bring up our exposure a little bit. Bring up the whites, get that glow. Maybe bring up our shadows just a wee bit. Bring up our blacks. And then we're going to knock down our highlights here until they look right. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's go into our color mixer. Let's go after our greens and our yellows. Pop those colors a little bit. Sky looks good on this one. I don't think we need to do anything to the sky to make it darker. Straighten. And I think we're done with that image. Yep. Good. Let's go into our color mixer. Let's go after our green. Well, that's saving out here. I'm just going to check on the stream. Colors a little bit. Sky looks good on this one. I don't think we need to do anything to the sky to make it. Darker. Straighten, and I think we're done with that image. Yep. Good. That's saving out. I think we could almost do this one with 2 layers. Let's try it with these 2. This layer, I think we could almost do this one with 2 layers. Let's try it with these 2. Yeah, I think we could just do our brights on this and get all that info in. So let's bring this up by a stop. Bring down our contrast. Bring up our shadows. Blacks. Bring down our highlights just a little bit. And I'm going to have it select our bright tones on this image here. Yeah, I think we could just do our brights on this and get all that info in. So let's bring this up by a stop. And that looks pretty good. And I think we got it in basically 2 exposures. So let's merge all these. Let's go into camera raw. Bring down the highlights just a little bit. Do some contrast. Let's bring up our exposure a little bit. The shadows are so dark. Bring up our shadows a little bit. Bring up our blacks a little bit. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Let's knock down the highlights quite a bit. Just bringing back as much information as we can. That looks good. Let's get the whites just a slight push. Maybe drop our exposure just a little bit. Push our shadows a little bit more. Push the blacks a little bit more. Do some sharpening. Do some straightening. Let's go in and play with our colors a little bit. Push the yellow greens. Push the reds a little bit. And I'm going to check on the straightening on this because I feel like it's just, yeah, I think I'm just going to leave it the way that it is. Do some sharpening. Go into luminance on our tree here. I'm just going to pull this down just a little bit because I feel like that's a little bright. Go and play with the colors a little bit. Maybe a little bit in our yellow greens. Push the reds a little bit. Okay, I think that looks good. Save that out. Go into luminance on our tree here. I'm just going to pull this down just a little bit. I feel like that's do this one. Exposures. Okay, I think that looks good. Save that out. Use our mid-range exposure. Let's align our layers. bring this down, I'll stop, because we're going to use that to bring up our darker areas. Let's go down, I'll stop. Let's do 26 contrast, 30 on the shadows, 30 on the blacks. Knock down the highlights just a little bit. Select our dark tones. Select that and let's give it a layer mask. And now we're going to merge these layers together. We're going to bring this up a whole stop here. 30 on the shadows, 30 on the blacks. Down the contrast, bring up our shadows, bring up our blacks, knock down our highlights a little bit. Select our dark tones. Fading, let's see what's this. This is probably like a yellow orange. Just pull that down just a little bit. And now we're gonna merge these layers together. Let's select our brights. Bring this up a whole stop here. 30 on the shadows, 30 on the blacks. Down the contrast, bring up our shadow. That looks like a nice blend to me. Let's merge these layers. Bring it into camera raw. Let's give it some contrast. Let's bring our exposure up just a little bit. Bring our shadows up just a little bit. Bring our blacks up just a little bit. And let's pull down on our highlights. That looks like a nice blend to me. Let's go into our color mixer here. Let's start playing with the greens and reds. Contrast. Let's bring our exposure up just a little bit. See some sharpening on this image. Shadows up just a little bit. Bring our blacks up just a little bit. Do a little bit of geometry. Get that straightened out. I think that looks good, so let's close that out there. Let's go into our color mixer here. Let's start playing with the greens and reds. See some sharpening on this image. Let's improve these since those are done. I'm going to over that one was too dark. So let's make those red. That looks good, so let's close that out there. Okay, let's load these up into Photoshop layers. Give that a second to load up here. Done. Over that one's too dark. Start with our mid-range exposure. Let's align our layers, make sure we don't have a lot of movement between frames. And eventually I'm going to go in there and I'm going to just Photoshop out my hand because I'm using that to block the sun flare that's coming in from the sun. Okay, so let's bring this down a stop. Give it some more contrast. Let's boost our shadows, boost our blacks, bring down our highlights. And eventually I'm going to go in there and I'm going to just Photoshop out my hand because I'm using that to block the sun flare that's coming in from the sun. And have it select our dark tones. Okay, so let's bring this down a stop. And we're just going to select this and we're just going to apply what we've selected with a layer mask. Okay, let's merge these layers. Let's boost our shadows. Let's bring this up by a whole stop. So we're going to use it to retain our highlight information. Bring down our contrast. Bring up our shadows. Bring up our blacks. Knock down our highlights a little bit. And we're just going to select this and we're just going to apply what we've selected with the layer mask. Let's do a little bit of luminance adjustment. I'm gonna make our sky a little bit darker blue. Bring this up by a whole stop. Let's see, we're gonna use it to retain our highlight information. Let's increase the saturation of the blues. Bring down. And let's layer mask this in by selecting our bright tones. Down the highlights a little bit. Okay. Let's merge these all into one layer. And let's take this into Camera Raw. Okay, so first off, more contrast. Bring up the exposure until it kind of glows on the wood and stuff like that. Right there's probably good. Bring up our shadows. Bring up our blacks. Knock down our highlights. Let's merge these all into one layer. And let's take this into camera. I think I want a little bit bluer of a sky, so we're going to adjust that here in a second. More contrast. Sharpen it. Let's go color mixer. Let's deepen our blues. Let's bring down the luminance a little bit. Bring up our blacks. It's looking a lot better. Maybe give our exposure a little bit more boost. Maybe push the whites just a wee bit. Give it that kind of glow. Let's go geometry. Let's straighten. It's fine. Maybe bring up the scale just a little bit on this image. It's looking a lot better. Maybe give our exposure a little bit of boost. Maybe push the whites just a wee bit. Give it that kind of glow. This is done. Let's go geometry. Let's straighten. It's fine. I would do it with just two layers, so let's do that. That was something to load up while that's saving out. So let's do that. We're going to go from our bright layer to our dark layer. So let's align these, make sure we didn't have any movement between our frames. A little bit. We're going to have it select our bright tones based on this image. And we're going to layer that in. It's going to look really muddy for a second because we haven't adjusted our exposure or our contrast. So let's bring this up a whole stop. Bring our contrast down. Bring up our shadows. Bring up our blacks. Down our highlights just a wee bit. Much better blend on that now. Let's merge these two layers together. Let's give this image some more contrast. Let's boost up our exposure. Bring up our shadows a little bit. Bring up our blacks just a little bit. Knock down our highlights. Retain the amount of information that we want to retain. Let's do some sharpening. Mask our sharpening just to the edges of everything. Let's make this straight. Do a little bit of color mixing. Reds. Let's make the roof pop a little bit in this color range. Green yellows. Maybe bring back a little bit of our green yellows just a tad. Bring this down just a little bit more and bring your exposure up just a little bit. Start sharpening the edges of everything. Okay, on that, straight. That looks good to me. Save that out. Let's make the roof pop a little bit. This color range. Green yellows. Maybe bring back a little bit of our green yellows a tad. This image, just use two exposures. And that. Looks good to me. Save that out. Wait. We have it go from the right. So let's bring this up a stop. Bring contrast down. Shadows, bring up our blacks. Knock down our highlights a little bit. Okay. Have it select our bright tones based on this image. And let's apply a layer mask. Okay, that looks like a nice blend to me. Merge our layers. Let's go into Camera Raw here. Let's bring up our contrast, of course. Bring up our exposure a little bit. Bring up our shadows. Have it select our bright tones. Bring up our blacks a little bit. And let's knock down our highlights until we retain the amount of detail that we want to retain. Okay, that looks like a nice blend to me. Give it some sharpening. Let's go to Camera Raw here. Straightening. Contrast, of course. Bring up our exposure. Get a little bit of color mixing. Colors, just the yellows and the greens. A little bit of the roof too. Bring up our blacks a little bit. Bring back a little bit of our blues and our yellows, just a little bit, and just push our exposure just a slight bit more. Give it some sharpening, straightening, a little bit of color mixing, colors, just the yellows and the greens, a little bit of the red too. Back a little bit of our blues and our got a sneeze coming on. Put these up into Photoshop layers. It's gonna brighten up this exposure. Full stop. Bring down our contrast. Shadows, our blacks. Knock down our highlights a little bit. Select our bright tones based on this image. And merge these together, brighten up this exposure. Let's go into Camera Raw. Let's bring up our contrast. Bring up our exposure. Bring up our shadows a little bit. Bring up our blacks a little bit. Down our highlights until we have the right amount of highlight detail. Just gonna do a little bit of sharpening. Together. Do a little bit of straightening. Do some color mixing. Bring up our contrast. Bring up our exposure. Bring up our shadows a little bit. Bring up our blacks a little bit. That looks good to me. I might pull down on our yellow oranges just a little bit more, retain more of our ground detail. Just gonna do a little bit of sharpening. Okay, and let's save that. Yeah. A little straightening, do some color mixing. Wait for that to save out, then we'll kick out some files. We'll take our images into Beta Photoshop to clean up the trash cans and some of the shadows and stuff like that, and then that will be the end of the stream. Done. Let's kick these out at full resolution. We'll take our images into Beta Photoshop to clean up the trash cans and some of the shadows and stuff like that, and then that will be the end of the stream. Let's kick these out at full resolution. Those are all kicked out now. Open the beta version of Photoshop, which has the generative fill tool. Let's close the main version of Photoshop here, open the beta. Those are all picked out now. In the beta version of Photoshop, which has the generative fill tool. Close the main version of Photoshop here, open the beta. It's fine. This we need to remove the sign out of it. That one's done. This one, remove the sign out of it. remove our shadow from this. Move flatten this. Let's remove this right here. Remove this water bottle. Let's go in and select this area here. I'm just going to tell it to add some fire. Flatten this. Let's remove this right here. Remove this water bottle. Go and just do a little bit of touch up here. That looks pretty clean looking. Save that out. My hand from this. Exploring all of these tree branches because it looks like they blurred a little bit. Now let's hit generate. That looks pretty clean looking. Save that out. Better, a lot better. Hand from this. That's actually what was really there was the sun. It was casting a terrible sun flare. All of these tree branches because it looks like the fire. Now let's hit generate. Get it in the right place. Let's try doing this again. Actually fire. There is the sun is casting a terrible sun flare. Fire. That's better. Flatten that. Let's save that out. Actually, there's still that water part there. Hold off on that. We'll remove the trash cans. We're going to remove the car. That's better. Flatten that. Save that out. Actually, there's still that water part there. Hold off on that. Remove the trash cars. We're going to remove the car. Phenomenal job. Flatten that. Let's remove our camera shadow. With our trash cans again. Phenomenal job. Flatten that. trash cans again. Do everything individually on that. So let's paint back in our trash cans. I didn't do a super great job, but it did a great job on everything else. Let's try this again. Right, Jen, filling it this way. But it did a great job on everything else. Let's try this again. That didn't. Okay, let's try this again. Let's try just drawing a line around it, because that's what we did on the previous batch, and it worked. Okay, Jen, filling it this way. Let's try this again. Much better. Sometimes it just takes a couple tries. That's what we did on the previous batch, and it worked. That real quick. Much better. Sometimes it just takes a couple tries. Here. That real quick. Remove these power lines here, so it's distracting from our shot. Okay, that one's done. It's all looking really good. Okay. Gonna end the stream here, so I'm gonna throw the images up into the slideshow at the stream ended screen, and then you can take a look at them from what we did tonight. But this is the end of the stream here, and thanks for watching. It's all looking really good. Okay. Gonna end the stream here, so I'm gonna throw the images up into the slideshow at the stream ended screen, and then you can take a look at them from what we did tonight. But this is the end of the stream here, and thanks for watching.